Which one? The new girl, Ijoma, the one from Enugu. She was the most promising one. A pause, a sigh, almost bored. Bring her back, gently, a beat. The first time. 3 weeks earlier, Ijoma thought she was the luckiest girl in her village. The building on Adiola Otaku Street had 3 faces, and it wore each one with practiced elegance. The first face was the one you saw from the road, a glass-fronted spa called Vivint's Wellness and Beauty, its gold lettering catching the late afternoon sun like something divine. Inside, the air smelled of warm eucalyptus and expensive shampoo. Women in pristine white uniforms glided between treatment rooms on polished marble floors. Soft music played. Clients reclined in chairs with their eyes closed and their troubles elsewhere. That was the face Lagos saw. That was the face Lagos trusted. The second face was the hotel, the Vivint Suites, accessible through an interior corridor that connected seamlessly to the spa. To anyone watching, it was simply a boutique hotel. Clean rooms, room service, a well-stocked bar on the ground floor where businessmen sat in leather chairs and spoke in low voices over glasses of amber liquid. The kind of place where questions were not asked and answers were never offered. And then there was the third face. The back. No signage, no windows on the street side. A wall that was too high, topped with wire that caught the sunlight in a way that looked almost decorative until you looked long enough to understand what it was for. There was one gate, matte black, industrial, operated by a remote that only 3 people in the building possessed. When it opened in silence. When it closed with a sound that was final in a way that had nothing to do with mechanics. Behind that gate was a courtyard. Behind the courtyard was a building that had no name, only a number on an internal floor plan that Mrs. Vivian Cole kept locked in a filing cabinet in her office. Inside that building were rooms, clean rooms, yes, with running water and adequate food, but rooms with no handles on the inside of the doors. Rooms painted a yellow so cheerful it made your teeth ache. Rooms that held girls. Always girls. Always young. Always healthy. Ijoma arrived on a Thursday morning with a small red suitcase that had belonged to her mother and a printout of the offer letter she had read 17 times on the bus from Enugu. She was 22 years old, had completed her WAEC with 3 distinctions, and had spent the previous 18 months selling provisions at her aunt's shop, saving every naira she could toward the future she could see so clearly she could almost taste it. The letter had found her through her neighbor's cousin, a woman named Mrs. Equium who wore good shoes and spoke about Lagos the way people spoke about heaven, as though she had been there and returned changed. The position was for a trainee esthetician at Vivint's Wellness and Beauty. Accommodation provided, meals provided, monthly stipend. The chance, if she performed well, to be sponsored for a professional certification. Ijoma's mother had wept with joy. Her father had pressed a folded piece of paper with scriptures into her palm at the motor park. She had not stopped smiling the entire journey. The spa's reception did nothing to temper her excitement. If anything, it multiplied it. A young woman behind the front desk smiled at her with teeth that seemed professionally arranged and led her through the main corridor to a room in the back where 3 other girls were already seated on a soft sofa, clutching their own small bags, wearing their own wide-eyed expressions. They introduced themselves in the way new recruits do: names, states, schools, quiet laughter at shared nervousness. There was a D's from IMO, serious and beautiful. There was Funmi from Akiti, loud in the best possible way. There was a quiet girl called Precious from Delta who said almost nothing but watched everything. That first week was everything the letter had promised. Morning training in the spa. Afternoons learning product names and techniques under a supervisor named Blessing who smelled of jasmine and corrected mistakes without cruelty. Meals in a canteen behind the reception area, rice and stew, sometimes fried plantain, always more than enough. They slept in a dormitory adjacent to the main building, 4 beds, a shared bathroom, a window that looked out over a garden that someone had planted with actual flowers. Ijoma video called her mother on the 3rd night, whispering so as not to wake the others. "Mama, it is like I described. Better even the food." Her mother's face on the small screen was pure light. Ijoma did not notice, on that 3rd night, that the door to the dormitory did not lock from the inside. She did not notice because she was not trying to leave. She did not notice, on the 5th day, that Blessing never answered questions about days off or about when they would be permitted to visit home. She did not notice that the corridor they used each morning to reach the training room passed a junction, left to the spa, right to a heavier door, and that the heavier door was always, always closed. And she did not notice, not until the end of the first week, that the window in their dormitory, though it opened onto an internal courtyard. That there was, in every direction she could see from that courtyard, a wall. And at the end of the courtyard, exactly where the building's shadow fell longest in the afternoon, a black gate that she had simply assumed was part of the property's aesthetic. It was on the 7th day that she heard it close. She had stepped outside after dinner to get air. The gate was open. She had not known gates like that could open, had barely noticed it before, and beyond it she could see the silhouette of a car driving away into the amber dusk. For a single, weightless moment she saw the street. She heard the sound of ordinary Lagos, the Okada horns, a hawker's shout, music from a shop across the road. Then the gate swung closed. It sealed with a sound that entered her chest and sat there. She stood very still. Somewhere behind her, a guard she had not heard approach said, "Good evening, trainee. Curfew started 10 minutes ago. Please return inside." She returned inside. That night, she did not sleep. If something about this story is pulling at you, if you feel that pull in your chest that says this could be real, that this is real for someone, somewhere, then share this. Right now. You never know whose algorithm you might break through. You never know whose eyes need to see this story today. The summons came on the 9th morning, a knock on the dormitory door before breakfast. A junior staff member she hadn't seen before, holding a clipboard, not meeting anyone's eyes. "Ijoma Nwasu, Mrs. Cole will see you now." She had not known, until that moment, that there was a Mrs. Cole. The office was at the end of a corridor she had never been down, past the heavier door that was always closed, which today stood open with a deliberateness that felt arranged. The corridor beyond it smelled different, less eucalyptus, more bleach. The lighting was different too, fluorescent, flat, honest in the way that operating theaters are honest. Mrs. Vivian Cole was sitting at her desk when Ijoma entered. She was perhaps 50, perhaps older, with a bone structure that belonged in a magazine and eyes that had long since stopped pretending to be warm. She wore a blue suit. She was holding a pen. She did not offer Ijoma a seat. "You're the brightest of the new intake," Mrs. Cole said. "Blessing tells me you have excellent fine motor skills, calm under instruction, eager." A pause. "I like eager." Ijoma said thank you. "The position you've been assigned to has changed slightly," Mrs. Cole continued, in the tone of someone reading from a document. "You won't be working in the spa. You'll be moved to a residential facility within the compound. Your accommodation will improve. Your allowance will increase." She set her pen down. "Significantly." Ijoma's skin prickled. "What kind of facility?" "A reproductive health unit," Mrs. Cole said. "Managed with complete medical oversight. Girls stay for a period of approximately 9 months. When they leave, they are compensated." The room went very quiet. Ijoma started. "You were brought here because you are healthy, young, and without the kind of family that asks difficult questions." Mrs. Cole said it the way a doctor reads a diagnosis. Factual, final. "The work is not complicated. It is not dangerous. The medical staff are professional, and the money is real." "I want to go home," Ijoma said. Mrs. Cole looked at her then, truly looked at her, and what Ijoma saw in her face was not cruelty. It was something worse. It was the expression of a woman who had stopped thinking of the people in front of her as people at all. "That option," Mrs. Cole said, picking her pen back up, "is not currently available." The ward was accessed through a door at the far end of the corridor that Ijoma was escorted to by a guard who did not speak and a nurse who would not meet her eyes. When the door opened, the sound hit her first. Not crying exactly, but a kind of ambient exhaustion, a low human frequency of women who had been worn down to something quieter than grief. There were 14 girls, some visibly pregnant. some in the early days, some who had just delivered and were sitting with the specific blankness of women whose arms had been emptied. The room was clean, yellow walls, adequate light, a television mounted on a bracket playing a soap opera at low volume. This was the Ward of Shadows, though no one called it that out loud. It had no name that was spoken. It simply was. And within an hour of Ijoma's arrival, she understood its geometry completely. The window that faced the inner wall, the door with its external lock, the timetable posted beside the bathroom that detailed mealtimes, exercise periods, and medical check-ins with the precision of a prison schedule wearing a wellness center's clothing. An older girl found her sitting on the edge of an empty bed, hands in her lap, staring at nothing. She sat down beside her without being invited. She was perhaps 25, with a face that had been beautiful before whatever had happened to it happened, and eyes that had completed the journey from shock to calculation and were now living permanently in the latter. "I'm Kimmy," she said. "How many months?" "I'm not pregnant," Ijoma said. Kimmy almost smiled. "Not yet." Kimmy had been there 2 years. She had delivered 4 Bobbies in that building. She said it the way other people said they'd passed 4 exams, as though the human element had been administrative. And she was now 3 months into a 5th pregnancy she had not consented to and could not end. She knew the compound the way a person knows a place they have mapped with their whole body in the dark. The guard rotations, the delivery schedules, the hours when the black gate opened for supply trucks, the precise moment each morning when the corridor camera experienced a 14-second delay that nobody had ever bothered to fix. She told Ijoma all of it over 3 evenings, in whispers, facing the television so that anyone watching would see 2 girls watching a soap opera. And then the raid came, and Kimmy made her vow, and everything changed. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Not for the algorithm. For the girls in rooms like this one, whose stories go untold because nobody clicked, nobody shared, nobody stayed until the end. Your subscription is someone's witness. Be a witness. The police van arrived on a Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning. 2 officers, plain clothes. They sat in Mrs. Cole's office for 47 minutes. When they left, the junior staff member who had escorted them in carried a black bag that she placed in the boot of their car. The kind of bag that does not jangle, that lands with weight. The ward girls watched from the courtyard as the van reversed out through the black gate. Funmi, who had been in the ward only 2 weeks longer than Ijoma, pressed her hands to her mouth. Precious said nothing for the rest of the day. Kimmy watched the gate close and made no expression at all. That night she announced, loudly in the middle of the ward, that she was going to refuse the next medical procedure, that she was going to refuse to eat, that she would make a noise loud enough and sustained enough that even Mrs. Cole's money could not insulate the building from the outside world. She said it the way people say things they have already decided, past the point of being argued out of. 3 days later, Kimmy's bed was empty. Her things were gone. Not packed, gone, the way things are gone when they are erased rather than removed. The staff member who brought breakfast did not mention it. The nurse who conducted the morning check did not mention it. When Ijoma asked, she was told that Kimmy had been transferred to another facility for specialist care. Ijoma looked at the empty bed and understood, in her body before her mind could process it, that Kimmy had not been transferred anywhere. She looked at her own hands. She thought, I will not be Kimmy. She thought, I will be what Nurse Agnes told me to be. Nurse Agnes had found her in the bathroom on the evening after the bribe, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, doing the arithmetic of despair. The nurse had been at Vivint's for 6 years. She moved through the ward with the efficiency of someone who had learned to perform care while quietly going insane from the inside, and she had been watching Ijoma since the first day with an expression that was not pity. Pity was useless here, but something more actionable. Assessment. She sat on the floor beside Ijoma and spoke in a voice below a whisper, her lips barely moving, her eyes on the door. The only way out of this building, Nurse Agnes said, is to make them believe you have accepted it. Ijoma stared at her. You have to agree, you have to smile. You have to perform gratitude so convincingly that when they look at you, they see compliance. not rebellion. Compliance is invisible. Rebellion gets you Kimmy's bed. How long? Ijoma asked. Until they trust you enough to give you access to the hotel side. Housekeeping, laundry, the bar stock rounds. Agnes paused. The car park. This story is not finished yet. And if you want to see how Ijoma gets out, if you want to be there when she crosses that gate, subscribe. Share this. Tell one person. Because stories like this live or die by whether people decide they are worth telling. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Ijoma's life, and also, in a terrible way, the most focused. She became a student of performance. She smiled at meal times. She thanked the nurses. She attended the medical check-ins without resistance. She asked, cautiously, whether well-performing residents were given additional responsibilities, whether there was a way to contribute more to be useful, to earn the kind of trust that came with expanded access. They gave her laundry duty first, then bar stock restocking on Thursday evenings when the hotel bar received its weekly delivery. She memorized the layout of the service corridor on her third stock run. On the fourth, she located the staff changing room and the row of spare uniforms on their pegs, and she counted the distance from the changing room to the car park exit in the seconds it took her heart to beat. She stole the uniform on a Friday afternoon. She wore it folded flat against her skin, under her yellow ward clothes for 36 hours before the moment came. It came on a Sunday. A wedding party was checking out of the hotel suites, 6 cars in the car park, engines running, staff moving between the lobby and the vehicles with bags and gift boxes, and the particular busyness of a checkout that no one is managing particularly well. Ijoma walked out of the service corridor in her stolen uniform, carrying a bag of folded towels she had taken from the laundry room, moving at the pace of someone who had somewhere to be and had already been there before. Nobody stopped her. Nobody looked at her the way people look at someone who should not be there. She was staff. She was carrying towels. She was walking with purpose in a building that ran on purpose. The boot of the last car in the row was open. A groomsman was loading bags. He closed it. He walked back inside. The boot was not locked. Ijoma looked at the black gate, which was standing open for the cars. She looked at the guard, who was watching the gate, not the car park. She looked at the boot. She put the towels down. She opened the boot. She got in. The darkness was total. The air was immediately warm and getting warmer. The car's engine vibrated through the metal beneath her back like a second heartbeat, foreign and indifferent. She could hear voices outside, laughter, a door closing, the efficient small sounds of a convoy preparing to leave. She pressed herself against the back of the rear seat and made herself as small as she had ever been, and she breathed, slowly, counting each breath, the way Nurse Agnes had told her to count when the panic came. 1, 2, 3, you are still here, 4, 5, you are still moving, 6, 7. The car moved. She felt the gate. She knew it by the slight elevation of the threshold, the brief darkening of the already dark, the sound of the compound receding behind her like a held breath finally released. Lagos received her without ceremony, the sound of it flooding back in, traffic and generators and music, and the particular bright noise of a city that does not pause for anyone's private catastrophe. The car drove for 11 minutes. When it stopped at what she guessed was a junction, she opened the boot from the inside, and she climbed out onto the hot asphalt of a road she did not know, into the blinding, ordinary afternoon. She stood on the pavement, in a stolen uniform, with nothing in her hands. She was penniless. She was barefoot. She had left her shoes in the ward. She was shaking so badly, she had to grip a fence post to stay upright. She was free. She found a church 3 streets away. A pastor's wife gave her water and a phone. She called her father first, just to hear his voice, to confirm to herself that the world outside the compound had continued to exist in her absence. Then she called a number she had memorized from a poster she had seen through the van window on the day the police left with Mrs. Cole's bag. The NAPTIP hotline. She told them everything. She told it clearly, without emotion, the way Nurse Agnes had coached her to tell it when the time came. The address, the layout, the number of girls, the names she knew, the car registration of the police van, the face of Mrs. Vivian Cole behind her mahogany desk with her fan of cash and her practiced boredom. She told it as a woman who had decided, somewhere between the laundry room and the car park, that the price of her survival would be the full and complete telling of what she had seen. The raid came 4 days later. Mrs. Vivian Cole was arrested on a Wednesday morning, in her blue suit, at her mahogany desk. The gate opened for the last time, and this time it stayed open. Ajoma got out, but there are girls who haven't. There are buildings with 3 faces in cities across this country, and they run on silence. Don't be silent. Share this story. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And if this moved you, if it settled somewhere in your chest and refused to leave, then you already know what to do. The next chapter is coming. Be here for it.